Hello everyone. This is a talk about XCP-ng. So this is more the story behind the project and not a technical talk. But anyway, the title is Building an Open Source and Turnkey Virtualization Platform. So first, I'm Oliver. I'm the CEO and founder of Vates, a company doing open source since 2012. And I'm a sysadmin, I'm a former sysadmin, doing a lot of Linux, BSD, and Xen stuff. Also, I'm the founder of Xen Orchestra and XCP-ng project. You can find us on Twitter, and here is the website of XCP-ng project. So first, to be sure we are talking about the right thing, the title was about a turnkey and open source virtualization platform. So what does it mean? So it means that a virtualization platform is not just the hypervisor. It's the hypervisor, but also the network stack, the storage stack, and an API. So in the case of XCP-ng, it's basically Xen as the main engine, and Open vSwitch for the network, SMAPI, which is the storage stack inside XCP-ng, and finally Zappy, which is the API for it. On top of that, you can put Xen Orchestra, which is basically a web solution to manage the platform. When I said turnkey, turnkey means that you just have to download the ISO and install it on your hardware. So it means you don't have to make some specific configuration to have your Xen running. You just download, put on the stick, put on the hardware, install it, and that just works. Plus, you got everything that you need through the API. So it could be using a client like the CLI or a web UI. Anyway, every command is going through the API. So it means, for example, if you want to create a network, you don't have to do that manually, SSH to the box and create, a network using OVS. No need to that. You just tell the API, I want a network for my VM. And finally, when I said open source, well, we know what open source means, but I want to just tell it's not about only the license. It's GPL v2, that's cool, but it's also something that having a really, really nice community. And nice, I mean by that, a lot of people coming from everywhere and working on the project, not just, giving feedback, but also improving the documentation, etc. And finally, it's also about the governance of the projects. When I mean open source, I mean also that all repo, all the doc, and the developments, it's completely publicly accessible. So that's, for me, really important. It's not just a matter of the license. So this is just a view of a dashboard. So if you can represent what does it mean. So this is a web UI, Xen Orchestra on top of XCP-ng, so classical stuff, like Overt or Proxmox, whatever. So a bit of history for people here who doesn't know as any details. So it's not new. It was, in fact, the first open source hypervisor released back in 2003. And then Citrix acquired the company doing Xen, called XenSource. And Citrix decided to launch something called Xen Server, which is basically a virtualization platform. It was closed source at the time. And then a bit later, Citrix decided to focus more on desktop virtualization. So it means a product that are using Xen Server on top, but more, for people accessing to their desktop, Windows desktop from a remote location. And it means that Citrix is more focusing on that and not more on server virtualization. 1 year later, the first release of XCP was done, and basically it was the open source version of Xen Server. And XCP means Xen Cloud Project, so you start to know about XCP, so you can imagine why it's XCP-ng, because it's XCP new generation. A few years later, Xen Server was open sourced, so it means the end of the XCP project, because it was the open source thing, but now everything is open source, no problem. And this is when we started to work on Xen Orchestra, just to give you some timing. In 2017, Citrix decided to remove some really cool feature inside Xen Server. So they decided to remove, for example, live storage migration and that kind of stuff. And all big features, not in the hypervisor itself, because it's Xen, it's fully open source, but in the platform won't be open source in the end. So we decided just a few times later to start the XCP project, XCP NG project, to remove all those restrictions and to do a lot more than just a fork. So you can ask the question, why we are doing that? Because it sounds a bit 2008 to fork a virtualization platform. Everyone is talking about the cloud and the containers, etc., etc. But on the field, if you are not Netflix or a very large company like that, everyone is still using virtualization. And people want to have something that works, that's ideally open source, and that can scale. So, well, our reasons to do that were multiple. First, XenServer was a great tool, really a great tool, because it was a real turnkey platform. But now we know the future is a bit closed source. Sadly, there wasn't any developer community outside Citrix walls, because it's more a commercial project for Citrix. Also, Citrix had other priorities than working with the server virtualization world, so it makes sense for them to have other priorities, not a problem, but the problem with that is there is no convergence between people who want to make server virtualization and people who want to make desktop virtualization. Also, not all components were open to contribution. When you release, it's GPL compliant, you release the tarball, but you don't have the master branch. So it's really hard to contribute from some project inside it. So we saw a great opportunity to open everything and to allow people to work on that and to improve the project. Also, for us as a company working on Xen Orchestra, it's a good opportunity to grow the Xen ecosystem, by not just having one platform, but another one which is more open, and also be able to answer people's needs, not just on the management side, but also on the layer which is on the bottom of Xen Orchestra. Because now we can, having a common objective with both software to go into the right direction to improve, for example, some performances that are really important for us, and also fix all bugs, etc., etc. But doing a fork of a platform is like forking a distro, okay? So it's not really easy. Just to show you, this is basically XenServer or XCP-NG platform in that square. So it means you got a lot of components. So we are not forking every component. It wouldn't have make sense to fork Xen or Linux because they are fully open source. But the goal is to be able to take the stuff, to understand how it works, and to build that in a more open fashion, in short. Okay? But to do that, you really need to understand which component is talking to other components, etc. So the interactions between all those components. This is one of the challenges. So to recap, the three parts, the three main challenges that we have to overcome. The first one, and maybe the most important one, at least at first, is to get a good community working with us. So it means not to be only, a small company doing some stuff, a corner, but to be able to gather people around a project and to have people starting to do contribution and that kind of stuff. So we weren't, the only company doing that. So this is one of the challenge. The other one is, as you may see, the technical challenge. Technical challenge is we need to be able to fork that and to release something that works. Okay, so it's just not getting the whole stuff. We need to understand how it works, and we need to also be able to demonstrate how it works and to improve it, to fix bugs, and also for people using XenServer, maybe to be able to migrate to our solution. And finally, to is the adoption for Xen newcomers. For example, people who never had any experience with Xen, so it should be easy for them to use XCP-NG. And the last challenge is to have a really open project. Open, I mean by that, to get an open governance, for example, to be inside a foundation, or also the last part is to be continue to work for a long period of time. So it means we need to have on the corporate parts a support business model, so we can continue to pay a developer's team to work and to improve the product. So did it work? I have some answers. The first answer is, well, we did a Kickstarter last year, and the first objective was about only 6,000 euros. So it was a low bar, but we estimated that we couldn't take too many risks with that, so we will try, to see if there is some interest in the community about doing that. And for this first goal, the objective was to release a kind of prototype. And we had other goals, but without thinking that we will reach all of them. And finally, in less than 24 hours, so it's February to March, okay, so it's 1 month. And in less than 24 hours, we got the first goal, and then it continued, and we've seen that a lot of people were interested, in fact, to have a really turnkey, an open source virtualization platform. And in the end, even companies became sponsors by sending us money, not with the Kickstarter platform, but by sending checks or wire transfer. So in the end, it was more than this amount. And then it started, and it started really fast because we did the first fork in April, basically exactly the same thing than Zen server, but without the feature restriction. But then for the next releases, we've been able to add new features. For example, we have been able in October to also follow the pace of Citrix releasing Zen server and be able to sign our RPMs, to add software red support during installation, to add new features. So it's really a fast-paced cycle. So today, regarding the community and the project challenge that we had in the previous slides, we've got a lot of people who built a really, really vibrant community of people using it, a lot of active users on the forum. So active, I mean by that people with more than one post. We've got a lot of posts, a lot of threads every day. We've got a lot of unique downloads, so it's really a good sign that people are trying the product, are talking about the product. Plus, it's still really easy to upgrade from a working Zen server. It means it won't erase your VMs. It will just, like an upgrade, in fact. So we will reboot and you will be on XCP-NG and it works. We are now a member of Zen security pre-disclosure list. So it means before the public knows about some security features, we are, like Amazon or the big cloud providers. They have in average 15 days to fix some problems. So we are inside that, so that's really helpful to be able to fix problems really fast before it's public. We are working to be inside a foundation, so it's not official, so I can't tell a lot more about that, but we are working on that to really have an open governance and not be the only company behind that. We want to gather other people around it. And also, as I said, no license or feature restrictions. So about the technical side, so as I said, we did a lot of stuff in 1 year. So we already, for example, fixed bugs in the upstream. In the upstream, I made, for example, a Zen server. We discovered some bugs and we fixed them, or we helped Citrix developers to find the root cause of some problems. So it was really, really cool. We got a testing repo. That's really nice because it means for people who want to try some maybe cutting edge features or like support of storage that weren't existing before without taking risks to put that into production. So you can let the community to work with that. So that's really, really helpful. We got cloud stack compatibility, and finally we embed the Z standard compression inside XCP-NG. Basically, it's an algorithm, a compression algorithm made by Facebook, which allows us to compress faster and better than the existing algorithm in Zen server, which is using JZip. So we've got a comparison of backup time in gray, light gray, without compression. Then in dark, you got JZip compression, and in red with Z standard compression. So we did a lot of performance improvement for making a backup of a VM. For example, when you export the VM, it's compressed with Zen standard, and it's really, really faster, up to 6 times faster than JZip. So it means in less than 1 year, we were able to add really cool features in a short amount of time. So what's next? So this year, we want to have more firepower, and to do that, we are growing the team working on that. So we target to have up to 6 people working on it. We are working with some research labs and universities. So we found that a reasonable amount of papers were done in France about Zen. So that's really interesting to work with a local university, knowing Zen itself. So it can lead to interesting stuff. And we target a team about 20 people for the end of the year, if you count all the researcher and the engineers and the contractor. Again, it's a joint effort. Regarding the research and development, we had a lot of topics to cover because, as I said, there's a lot of room for improvements, and that's really great. You can see that we want to improve on any side of a virtualization platform. So we are targeting improvement on the storage side, on the network side, and compute side. And to do that with some universities, so you have publication, that's really great because you have also benchmarks, you have the data, so you can see the improvements that have been done into the research. So it's very a lot of different stuff, but to give you a quick example of one field that we are working this year is to improve the NVMe drive, Optane drive. If you don't know those drives, those are 3DX points memory from Intel, which is really fast, a lot of IOPS. But the problem is the legacy storage design for a virtualization platform were made when HDD were there, so high latency and not really a lot of IOPS. But then, if you decide to create a specific layer which is thinner than the original one, you can maybe reach almost the bare metal IOPS of the hardware. So you need to do a lot of improvement to go there, but that's doable. I mean, we got an architecture and we know the general direction when we need to go. But now this year we need to go to the next phase, which is a proof of concept and some benchmarks. And then if it goes well, then it will be implemented and again pushed upstream, because the goal is to push everything upstream. Also, because as I said, it's a distro in the end, like a Debian or whatever, we need to improve the thing. So in XCP-ng, like in Zen server, the DOM0, the privileged domain, is based on CentOS. So we need to have a platform like Koji to automate the RPM build process. Koji is used by Fedora. We need to also make some automated QA and CI. So if we add, for example, a patch of something, that ideally a platform should be able to tell everything is great, it's built, it works automatically. So this will help the project to have more contribution, because every time someone adds something, automatically it will be tested. Also, the great thing about it is that you can have nightly builds for people who want to test really cutting edge stuff. There's various stuff, so to improve the mirror management when someone will want to become a mirror for download XCP-ng. There's a lot of projects are doing. I think we will use a project used by the people behind the VLC projects. Okay, so we can use really interesting open source projects to help us about that. So also other features, but I won't enter too deep inside the details. So, and to recap, also regarding the Xen Orchestra side, it's a management platform, but more than that, you can do backup, resource delegation. So it's not CloudStack or OpenStack, okay, but still it helps to manage your infrastructure up to, let's say, 2,000 or 3,000 VMs. And then if you have a large infrastructure, probably CloudStack or OpenStack will be better. But anyway, we want to integrate more features between the two software, because this allows us to create really interesting connection and to also innovate on both interaction between the two software. So we are working with both Xen Orchestra team, but also the XCP-ng team, working together on the ideas to push both projects into the right direction. So how to help? Well, we got a really nice community, so if you want to just try it, download it, and then if you have any problems, to talk with people there. Also, we are hiring, so if you are interested to work on system development like QEMU or Xen or that kind of stuff, even the kernel, or if you are using or developing in OCaml, because the API is in OCaml, we're interesting, so just come to see me after the talk. As a company, there is a lot of interesting programs if you want to make research and developments at the European level. Also, just in the end, using it will be helpful, because more people using it, more hardware will be tested. So it can work from your, I would say, medium desktop machine up to your server inside the data center. But it was built in mind to run into, let's say, servers into a data center. So as you've seen, there's a lot of stuff coming, and the we did a lot with a small team, and having a larger team will be really interesting, and we hope to build a lot of new features and exciting features for this year. So stay tuned on the xcp.ng.org website to get all the new stuff. And that's it. If you have a question, go ahead. Yeah.
How is now the cooperation or the interaction with the Citrix guys in the Xenserver project?
For now, it's okay. What's the difference now with Xenserver projects? Right now, we tend to limit the fork because we are pushing upstream everything that we are adding. So, for example, for the ZSTD stuff, we added that into the upstream because most of the tools inside Xenserver are open source. So we can push, for the API, Zappy on GitHub, etc. So we try to maintain the smallest fork as possible, but drive innovation and maybe to use our innovation faster than the Citrix cycle, which is different than ours because we don't have the same, priorities in the end.
Will there also be like merging upstream features back into?
Yeah, merging features faster and yeah, to be more flexible than Xenserver release cycle. Yeah, there. So what do you mean is does it work with Cloud Stack or? Sorry, I didn't hear the.
Does it work with OpenStack?
OpenStack. Yeah, we don't have OpenStack support right now because OpenStack can work with Xenserver on the bottom, CloudStack 2. People at CloudStack already help to make it compatible with it, but not yet at OpenStack. I don't know the current status at OpenStack right now, but maybe you should ping some developers. It's the same API, so it's not really complicated to adapt to it. It's just changing the name, a string, basically to have the support of it because it's exactly the same API. Other questions? Yeah.
When you say we in the slide, is it the XCP community or more your company based? Are you the main driver currently?
Okay, so what the main driver for the XCP project? Right now, it's Vates, the company behind it. But for example, on the Windows stuff, like the Windows client and the PV drivers, it was someone from the community. So the goal to be inside a foundation is to be able not to be the only company driving the project. We have a lot of people working on it. We want to have a lot of people into it, and we have professional support on it, but it doesn't mean we'll be the only company to provide improvement inside it. And the goal is to have more companies to work with us. For example, we have some people who would like to have, for example, the VX line supports because they are using a big data center and they are ready to work with us to improve that. So it's not just something by one company. We don't want to be the only company behind that in the end. Yes?
When I heard of XCP the first time, I thought it would be some sort of a great alternative to something like Proxmox, for example. But with Proxmox, there's the advantage if you just want to run one server with virtualization, you already get a web UI and everything you need right after installation. But XCP is more of a more professional server which doesn't deliver a web UI already, and it's an orchestra to set it up for yourself is rather complicated. You're stuck with the Windows version, you don't work with Windows.
Okay.
Kind of a little more complicated because you need to get the community version of Zen Orchestra running. Is this somehow intended to get to like one server to reach people that run one server environments?
Okay, so the question is the ability to use only for smaller use cases for one server because, for example, Proxmox got a web UI bundled directly with the installation, so you just for one machine, it makes sense to have everything bundled. It's not the case for XCP-ng. But yeah, you can deploy Zen Orchestra relatively easily. If you just want a basic UI, we got a virtual appliance that's just ready to download and to use. If you want to install it from the source, yes, you need a VM to make it work. But bundling a web UI directly inside it could be problematic for something that's made to be work in clusters, in pools. So we are thinking about that, but there is no trivial solution to deliver something like that right now. Yes? Sorry, make what?
Flavor of XCP-ng?
With a web UI, okay, so the question is maybe to create a flavor of XCP-ng with a web UI bundle inside it. This is some stuff that we have discussed about already, so we are thinking about this. Oh, and by the way, we got stickers, if you want, at the end of the talk. Just thinking about it right now. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot.